people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this, a bit of news that caught me by surprise. Veteran promoter Lou Dibella took to his social media and stated, "We are proud to announce the re-signing of an incredible fighter coming off a fantastic knockout win last month, Shernikica Johnson. We're honored to have you here for another round, and here's to the future of women's boxing. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I had hoped that Shernikica, upon beating Nina Hughes for the second time, would have signed to Matchroom, that Matchroom would have made a decision to pick her up." I can only deduce that if she ended up going to Lou Dibella, it's because Matchroom didn't sign her. It's because Matchroom didn't decide to pick her up. That if they would have made her an offer, she would have taken it. It's nothing against Lou, but the most that Lou can do is rent her out to other promotional outfits, like a Matchroom, like a Most Valuable Promotions, because Lou Dibella himself doesn't have a broadcast deal with a major network. All he can do is loan her out to the promoters that do, making him tantamount to a booking agent and a middleman. It's just another hand in the cookie jar for Shernikica. Forgive me if I'm curt, but boxing is a business, and in a business sense, this doesn't make much business sense for Shernikica, who's already been a champion at 2 weights, and for her to hit the next level, I'm not necessarily sure that Lou Dibella is the man to get her there. The saving grace is that even though Shernikica didn't sign to a major promotional outfit, Dina Thorsland just did. And so did Sharita Metcalf ahead of what is to be their unification match. They are champions at the same weight as Shernikica Johnson. So you figure that whoever wins that fight, and I think it's going to be Dina, they're going to come looking for that last brass ring, and Shernikica Johnson has it. So even if she herself didn't sign to a major promotional outfit, she may still be a part of a major fight in the not-so-distant future. Dina and Sharita are supposed to be fighting in July on the undercard of Taylor vs. Serrano 3, and barring illness or injury, it's conceivable that the fight between the winner of that fight and Shernikica could take place before this year is out. One unification match over the summer months, and perhaps another in the fall or winter. With MVP and Netflix behind them, it's conceivable that all of this could still happen in a timely fashion, even if Shernikica Johnson is not with a major promotional outfit. The 2 other champions are, so that makes it possible. That's the good news. How I think this cookie is going to crumble, well, it's questionable as to whether or not Lou Dibella can actually keep Shernikica Johnson busy until such a time as the winner of that fight comes a knockin'. She may sit out the entirety of the summer, but the saving grace is that she has already fought at least once this year, the Nina Hughes rematch a few weeks ago, and thus, even if she sits out the entirety of the summer, there is still the fall, there is still the winter, there is still time to do this fight within the same calendar year. I think it's going to come down to Shernikica Johnson versus Dina Thorsland. For undisputed, 2 very capable mid-range to inside fighters. I would give the edge to Dina Thorsland, though. I think she's a little bit more accurate and a bit more heavy-handed than Shernikica. Both are 2 division champions that are tough as nails. Both are experienced, but I do think Dina Thorsland is a bit more talented than Shernikica Johnson, a bit more put together. And so if and when they do fight, I would go with Dina Thorsland to win a points decision in what will be a difficult fight, because I never said it was going to be easy, but I do think Dina can win it. I do think Dina, more so than anybody else at this weight, has what it takes to become undisputed champion.
Boxing fan, that's a fight which I would love to see. A lot of people talk about it. Do you think we do see Tank and Shakur square off at some point in the near future?
You know, look at it. It looks like Shakur is going to defend his title now against Zepeda, and if Tank fights again here and in midsummer, late summer, if the Roach fight comes off, that'll be up to Tank to decide. Like I've said earlier, he's earned the right to call his shots, and he's a great businessman, and that'll be Tank's decision.
Tank previously mentioned that he had this idea of, he wanted to maybe retire within a 3-fight period.
Right.
Tom Brown has left it to Gervonta Davis's own discretion as to whether or not there will be a Shakur-Stevenson fight at the end of this year. And since it's come out that if he would have won the Lamont Roach fight decisively like everybody expected him to, he wasn't going to move into a Stevenson fight. He was going to move into some kind of arrangement with Jake Paul.
That pretty much answers the question, doesn't it? Is he going to fight Shakur Stevenson? It doesn't look like it.
Tom Brown would have the best idea at this point. Tom Brown would know, because after Gervonta Davis parted ways with Floyd Mayweather Promotions, Tom Brown of TGB has been the one promoting his fights moving forward and acting on his behalf.
TGB, which is just another way of saying PBC, since most of Tom's fighters, if not all of them, fight under the PBC banner.
The TGB does most of the promoting over there at the PBC. Most, if not all of it. So if Tom is saying it's up to Gervonta Davis to make that fight, then we know it's not going to happen. And hearing Tom Brown say that Gervonta Davis at this point has earned the right to do whatever he wants.
Earned it by doing what? Bringing up smaller fighters to fight him? He brought up Jesus Cuellar. He brought up Hugo Ruiz.
He brought up Hector Luis Garcia. He brought up Lamont Roach. He brought down Ryan Garcia. He wouldn't fight him at a full 140.
But didn't he fight Mario Barrios at a full 140?
He did, though not without sticking a rehydration clause on him. With Ryan, he fought at a catch weight. And all of this creative matchmaking is intended to justify Gervonta Davis having his pick of the litter when that's what he's always done. That's what he's always had. He's always been choosy. Carefully handled. Gervonta Davis himself would have had you believe that a contract was sent to Shakur Stevenson for a fight, and Shakur rejected it. His fans ran with that one.
Well, that was music to their ears, because they want to believe people are avoiding Gervonta Davis.
They want it to be someone else's fault that these fights aren't happening, not Gervonta Davis. So Gervonta goes on his social media, basically lies about sending Shakur Stevenson a contract.
Well, how do you know he was lying?
You mean aside from having basic common sense? Well, Stephan Espinosa's actually the one that killed that noise. Stephan Espinosa's the one that let it be known no contract was ever sent to Shakur, in spite of what Gervonta Davis said.
So, speaking of Shakur, he said that you lied about sending him the contract. What do you have to say about that?
No, there was never a contract. I never said there was a contract.
Okay.
Yeah. There were some, very preliminary discussions, with PBC. But, they didn't go very far because, the reality, it never went anywhere near a contract.
Never went anywhere near a contract, according to Stephan, where Gervonta Davis told a very different story.
Because he's a liar.
Because he doesn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson, but he needs a reason not to. And if he has to manufacture one himself...
You see what he did?
So when Tom Brown comes out and says that it'll be up to Gervonta Davis to decide whether or not he wants to fight Shakur Stevenson later on in the year,
that just means he's not going to.
What is fulfillment of a prophecy I stated long ago. Gervonta Davis's career may come and go without him fighting any of his contemporaries, the real ones, like Vasyl Lomachenko, like Devin Haney, Teofimo.
Shakur.
This may very well be the final year of Gervonta Davis's career, and believe it or not, I look at that as a good thing. I look at that as cause for celebration, that the day may soon come when we don't have to deal with his idiot fans anymore, and we don't have to deal with the constant gaslighting when it comes to this protected hype job.
Some may be disappointed that he never fought any of those guys, but if you're like me and you never expected him to,
your expectations would have already been very low, and this would have been what you expected, and thus you're not disappointed.
You're not let down.
So if he wins the Lamont Roach rematch, he's likely going to move right into that situation with Jake Paul after that, make a truckload of money, and then retire. Then sail off into the sunset, having taken no risks. No risks at all.
Whatever, man. Just go away.
Tank the hardest puncher I ever faced. No. And I ain't shitting on him or nothing like that. He can punch. But Jonathan Okendo, he's from Puerto Rico. Bro, he got bricks in his hands, bro. I lie to you not. He punch hard. I ain't gonna lie. He a hard-hitting motherfucker.
Revelations that have since come out in the aftermath of Davis versus Roach that Gervonta Davis isn't even the hardest puncher Lamont would have faced.
And that he didn't even make the most money fighting Gervonta that he could have made. I didn't expect that.
Recently made an appearance on The Art of Ward, Andre Ward's podcast, where he said, "People who think I was just taking this fight for the money, it wasn't the thing. I actually had an offer that was higher than the Tank fight to defend my belt. I could have smoked that dude, and the opportunity would have been gone."
One is left to wonder, who is he talking about? Who made him a better offer than Gervonta Davis when Gervonta's supposed to be king shit around these parts? He's supposed to be the face of boxing. You're telling me that somebody out there is paying out more to their opponents than Gervonta?
Yeah. Canelo Alvarez, the real face of boxing. Guy fights Canelo, win or lose, he's gonna take a victory lap. He's gonna throw a victory party like Edgar Berlanga did, because even though he lost the fight, he won the sweepstakes.
Where Gervonta Davis doesn't seem to be paying out his opponents all that much. And I'm not surprised to hear it, because that's what I expected. They cheap out on the opponents.
You're not fighting seven-figure fighters like a Devin Haney, a Shakur Stevenson, a Teofimo Lopez. You're on a budget.
You cheap out on the opponents because a lot of the time, they're nobodies.
I ain't got nothing against Lamont Roach, but the fact of the matter is, right before he fought Gervonta Davis, he was literally fighting on YouTube, on ProBox.
So what does that tell you?
The only guy he ever fought who was worth anything was Ryan Garcia, and if not for Ryan, that fight would not have been as big as it was. It's just a shame that Ryan didn't realize it soon enough that you've got a lot more leverage in this situation than you think, because this butterball don't touch $1 million or even $500,000 unless you bring the customers, you bring the fans. You should have never made that concession.
Should have never agreed to those weight stipulations.
But it's all water under the bridge and change under the couch cushions now. The point of it is, Gervonta Davis does not have the marquee value that people think he has, and Lamont Roach's recent comments are the evidence.
There are people paying out more to their opponents than Gervonta Davis is paying out to his, where he's supposed to be the face of boxing, or at least one of them.
Not based on that, because what makes the face of boxing, is you stand to make the most money by fighting them, win or lose, and that does not seem to apply to Gervonta or his opponents.
What about his power?
What, that he's not the hardest puncher Lamont Roach would have ever faced? I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that. I always thought that Gervonta Davis's knockouts were the byproduct of creative matchmaking, opportunistic matchmaking, because if you were that big a puncher, surely you should be able to knock out a super featherweight moving up in weight. If you are who they say you are, I've always known you're not.
And now Lamont does too. Which begs the question, will Gervonta Davis be able to get it right in the second fight?
If he were as good as they make him out to be, why should he even need one?
I'm trying to have that longevity card, and it's going to be tough, you know, especially once we get back in with the real best of the best. But that's what I really live for, man. You know, let's put everybody through the Thurman test, man. If I can get this Spence fight just to run it for the history books, run it. But Fundora, definitely on the hit list for later this year, definitely.
Whenever I hear someone mention Errol Spence Jr. as a potential opponent for the not-so-distant future, it immediately communicates a guy who's trying to stay on easy street, because by all rights, no one should be mentioning Errol. Errol should not sit atop of any hit list until such a time as he gives an ETA, when he will return, and if he has a tune-up fight. It's as simple as that. It's been close to 2 years since Errol Spence Jr. fought, and we all know what happened the last time he fought. So how could he be a prime target for today's Keith Thurman?
Keith Thurman has always been an opportunist.
And a prime example of why I don't put these fighters on a pedestal. They're just as opportunistic as everybody else, with the same character flaws. for you to be looking at Errol now, after years of avoiding him, when he was a dangerous fighter, when he was a champion, for you to be looking at him now?
Where's your dignity?
And if not your dignity, your situational awareness. Errol hasn't even hired a replacement trainer for Derek James yet. Why would you be looking at him?
You sound like a jackass.
I mean, do you not know how you sound? Bringing that guy up, bringing Errol up, of all people. Sebastian is a little bit more realistic, and I say a little bit because currently Sebastian is in talks to fight his mandatory challenger, Xander Zayas. The Xander Zayas fight does not rule out a Keith Thurman showdown indefinitely, depending on some outlying factors. First,
Xander has to be next. He has to be next unless Sebastian is prepared to surrender the brown belt. Then if he surrenders it, he can go on to fight Keith. He can go on to do whatever he wants.
But currently he is in talks to fight Xander Zayas, and I feel like for this Keith Thurman thing to stay a thing, Sebastian has to win. He has to make it past Xander. If he loses, well, there goes the neighborhood.
Now, I heard that the reigning IBF champion at this same weight, Bakram Murtazaliev, is interested in fighting Keith, and that he would be willing to defend the red belt against him.
But he knows that Keith is scared, and he knows that Keith won't do it. I think Bakram is right in that assertion because he's the only reigning champion at junior middleweight that's available, not otherwise preoccupied. But how many people do you see calling him out?
Not Keith.
Everybody Keith Thurman brings up happens to have something going on, whether it's Ryan Garcia and his Rolly Romero fight and what could be a Devin Haney rematch, Sebastian Fundora, who's got to fight Xander Zayas, Errol Spence Jr., who is quasi-retired.
He's always bringing up guys that are not immediately available.
Likely on purpose. The whole point of going to Australia and fighting Brock Jarvis was as a segue to a Tim Tszyu showdown. And so far, that is still the biggest fight that Keith could be in the immediate future. They're the only ones offering you anything serious.
Oh, you try to find a way out.
Talk about blowing things out of proportion. I remember when Liam Pato knocked out Brock Jarvis in the first round of what was their fight, before Keith did it, because it took Keith longer.
When Brock was still unbeaten.
When Liam Pato stopped him, nobody blew that out of proportion, and nobody took it out of context like what they're doing now with Keith. Keith knocks out a guy who used to fight as low as 135, and that means that he's back?
Oh, he's all the way back now? Is he elite again?
Back on his feet again, one-time Thurman?
Yeah, break.
Now I wonder if Keith Thurman will follow through with that Tim Tszyu fight. Immediately after Tim's win over Joey Spencer, Keith took to his social media and stated, "Send the contract." And I wonder if he was serious or if he was just doing that for the optics.
Because he knows there's an expectation. Because he knows people are expecting him to fight Tim. You're talking about all these other people that are not otherwise available right now. Tim Tszyu is. What are you gonna do about it?
Posture, then sit out for another 2-3 years? We all know that Keith Thurman is not afraid of sitting on the sidelines.
Playing the bench.
Underneath it all, I don't think Keith really wants the Tim Tszyu fight, doesn't want to have to travel. American boxers resent having to travel.
He would likely prefer to stay here, but who here is offering you anything?
It's a question.